Hi everyone. We are working on building an enhanced CI, continuous integration, CT, that stands for continuous testing, and CD, which stands for continuous deployment pipeline for web API development. And we will be presenting our progress from Sprint 3. To recap the stories from our previous sprint, we were successful in automating deployment of the Flask app on Google Kubernetes Engine. We also ran integration and load test on the application manually, and we were successfully able to automate deployment of the integration test on Google Platform Kubernetes Engine. We did not automate load test and could not generate logs for the test running on GitHub Actions in the last sprint, and that is something which we have concentrated on in the coming sprint. Coming to the user stories for this sprint, the first user story, we wanted to automate the CI pipeline by running the integration test, load test, and enabling logs. We were able to do this successfully. Um, Coming to the second user story, we wanted to set up the staging environment and deploy the Flask application on Google Kubernetes Engine. In the previous sprint, we had created a temporary environment and had deployed our application there. In this sprint, we concentrated on creating a staging environment. We were able to do this successfully. The third user story was to build a pipeline to run the test on staging environment on Google Kubernetes Engine. After the deployment of the Flask app, we concentrated on running the integration and load test in the staging environment. This story was successfully completed. And the fourth story was to deploy our application on Kubernetes on MOC. So till now, we had been concentrating on Google Kubernetes Engine. We wanted to shift our focus to Kubernetes on MOC. This is still in progress. We have completed 50% of it, and this will be worked on in the next sprint.
In the last sprint for the CI pipeline part, we were not able to get the log from our integration test and load test. In this sprint, we successfully got the logs from our testing. This image is an overview of our CI pipeline. We could see status and total duration of the entire CI pipeline run. The CI YAML file section indicates what happened after the pull request. The pull request triggered GitHub Actions to firstly do the code format check, then followed by a unit test, and next is to set up, build, and deployment of our application to Kubernetes. After the application is deployed, the integration test and load test will be deployed and run. When all testing is finished, the cluster environment will be deleted to keep the environment clean. As we can see, the running time of our CI pipeline is almost 18 minutes. It is longer than expected. We are still exploring another way to make the CI pipeline more efficient. The image here is an overview of our integration test. We are able to know time consumed of each step. There is a section called Selenium test log. This is the place that we could check our log, and it will indicate our test is success or failure. This is an example of a past integration test log detail. And this is a failure example. It notices as a failure, and we can see log detail to check traceback info. Similar for the load testing. This is a log for load test. We can see every single detail of the test, especially the number of requests, number of failure, and each response time. Since load test log are super long, we might not be able to display the image for entire log here. But basically, this is an idea of what it looks like. And this is the conclusion table of the load test at the end of log.
This is an overview of CD pipeline. In this sprint, we build a staging environment in CD. Once we pass the test in CI pipeline, we can merge it to main branch. Then the GitHub action will be triggered by the event of push to main, and we will start to test the app in the staging environment. In this pipeline, we will deploy the app on Kubernetes and create a temporary test environment to run integration test and the load test. Here is a live demo after we merge the pull request into main branch. There is a pull request that passed all the tests and ready to be merged. Once we click the merge, and the whole pipeline will run automatically. Then we can go to the action to check out the running. First, we will deploy the app on Kubernetes in a running cluster. And here's the way how we do this through GitHub Action. So first, we will set up an environment to support Google Cloud CLI tools and get a credential to get access to Kubernetes. The next step is the build. So we will build the image of our application and based on the Docker file in our repo. Then we will push this image to Google Cloud. The last step, we will deploy the app on GKE with the image name that we published in the previous step. Once we deploy the application, we will run the integration test job on Kubernetes and send back the log. It takes about 4 to 5 minutes to run the test and get ready for the container. So once the job finished, we will get the log. And if the test failed, we will receive a warning as well as the traceback info. We can see here our test finished, and here's the result. It's a result log here. Thirdly, we will run the load test job on Kubernetes and send back the live log. As we can see here, the load test is waiting for running now. And once the container is ready, the live log will show in the console immediately. Here's the live log of load test. The whole load test takes about 30 seconds to run. If the load test fail, we will receive a warning here as well. Right now, it's successfully run, so it passed the test. After we finish the test, we will delete the deployment of our application and the test job as well. Here we can see what happened here in the GKE. We successfully delete our deployment and the job. Now, all the jobs have finished, and this is what happened in CD staging environment pipeline.
As a developer, we would ideally like to deploy our application on Kubernetes on MOC, or specifically on OpenStack. So basically that involves 3 steps in the following order. We get started by creating a virtual machine on OpenStack. We create a VM by choosing the availability zone, the boot source, choose a flavor, which is basically the amount of resources we need, and add a network. We also associate a floating IP to the virtual machine. Floating IP allows external access from outside networks or internet to an OpenStack virtual machine. The second task is to install Kubernetes on the virtual machine. For this, we leverage KubeNow. KubeNow is a cloud agnostic platform for microservices. So we set up the initial cluster configuration and credentials. We specify the master and node flavor and deploy our cluster. Everything is done via the command line using a custom script. Our third task is to write a YAML file to automate the application deployment on Kubernetes with MOC. This is an ongoing task right now, and we are leveraging GitHub.
Let's now have a look at the burn down chart for this sprint. We were committed to total 36 story points and were able to complete 28 of them and left with 2 tasks, which would be carried over to the next sprint. We were able to complete the tasks at a constant velocity as we split up the work based on the subtasks that we created. Coming to the plans for the next sprint, as mentioned in the earlier slides, we noticed that CI pipeline is taking longer time, near to 20 minutes. Our goal is to optimize this task by optimizing the Docker build for Selenium and load tests. The next task for the upcoming sprint would be to create the production environment for the application and run the integration and load tests on the production environment. In addition to performing the tasks so far on the Google Kubernetes engine, we started setting up the application and test environment for the CI and CD pipeline on MOC, and we will be continue to work on this in the upcoming sprint. Thank you guys. We are now open up to Q&A.